Hello, hello. Today I want to tackle a topic that's been discussed a bit in some black and white circles, and that is, are items like Custap Berry, do items like Custap Berry make the game less competitive? And if yes, should we get rid of them? Alright, this might sound a bit weird, right? But the theory behind it is that you cannot realistically know if a Pokemon is running said item, and so you have to kind of play around it, but to play around it makes your game plan not really a decent game plan. So you have to play against something like Tyranitar, for example, a big Custap Berry user, and but you have to play around it like if it was, say, Choppleberry. Like you cannot just raw click focus blast on it with a full health Azam, for example. But if you don't and your opponent is running Custap Berry, then not only they nullified your Zam despite not having the item to do so, but then Custap Berry, they might activate their Custap Berry and then you just instantly lose, basically, because they flip the game by having their Tarantar grab a surprise kill when they really shouldn't have. And this is I sort of understand where people who at least wonder if we should allow it are coming from. And we're starting to see Custap a bit more often, which is kind of worrisome because I share some of the the ideas behind oh, this item is a bit weird to have around, right? Because unlike any other item, you cannot really prepare for it, and your opponent can play in a way that they activate it basically every time. And there's also moves like endure, although obviously that costs a move slot, so that's a bit less, let's say, like it's a bit more costly to run. But even then, I've seen games get completely flipped because someone was running Custap Berry, and even if they weren't, if it starts becoming more common, then you have to play around it, even if they don't have it. And since you have no real way of knowing, you're always one step behind, just in the mental game, in a sense, and also just you go behind in game as well. And yeah, so for example, this game that's happening on screen right now, this is one of the games where Custard just flips it on its head. The game just is won by last Mon Titar activating their Custard. And so, is this uncompetitive? Like, is the whole idea of having items like Custard uncompetitive? Uh, Maybe in a sense, yes, because obviously since you cannot know that it's coming and yet you still have to respect it, means you will have to make suboptimal plays a lot of the time, or you can pretend it doesn't exist, and then if your opponent is actually running it, you risk losing just because you ignored it. But if you don't ignore it, you have to play much worse and take weird lines. And so yeah, that's that's what makes it problematic. But and it's fine for now because nobody's using it except a few people. But if it starts becoming more widespread, then yeah, it does become a big problem. And so, should we do anything about it? Probably not, right? Because it's still a, I don't know. It doesn't pass the, like, I don't know how to word it. Um, it's, I don't know, just the idea sounds silly, right? It will be like banning moves on certain mons because they could pull them off as a surprise and get a surprise kill, right? When that used to be the hallmark of, I don't know, let's say skillful building or at least reasoned building. And does Custap fall into the same category? I don't know. It could. Or it could be just to be a gimmick item, right? And then should we ban gimmick items? Probably not, unless they're like, say, bright powder is a gimmick item, for example, but it's still stupid to have, right? In a serious capacity, like it's an unserious game, an unserious item, and so yeah, you should probably we. It makes sense to get rid of it. And obviously, does Custap Berry fall into the same pattern? I'm not sure. Let's. I don't know. Personally, I don't know. It does sound stupid, but I also sort of see it. Like I all right, this was Scarf Terrakion, by the way, and what watch what happens. Right, Amaranth played for a late game Scarf Terrakion sweep, but then Tyranitar just clicks Endure, and now Custap Berry is up, and the game is over. Hadi, obviously, Amaranth didn't have the faintest idea that this was coming, and so he played it to. He played the best. He built a game plan around his opponent not having a Custap Berry. But this works now because nobody's using it except a couple of people here and there. It's still seen as a bit of a weird one, but if more people run this, then you would have to play completely differently. And then imagine this exact game, but both players know that there's Costa Berry on Tyranitar, and then you have to play around it. But can you really do anything about it? I mean, you can just click Focus Blast with Zam on it, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to one-hit KO this Titar. But then, since you don't know its item, it does get weird, right? Because you have to pretend it has both chop. Like you have to play as if it had both the Chopple and Costa Berry, but obviously you don't know that, and so you get yourself into a very weird situation. And so again, the question is, should we do anything about it, or do we just have to accept that someone could just abuse it? Like, and the answer, again, I have no idea if we should do anything about it. I feel like we shouldn't, and if more people start using Costap, we probably figure out a way to not make it as overbearing. And yeah, that's about it, really. Uh, is it uncompetitive? It depends. I think some people who are like, I see that some people don't like the uncertainty that comes up a lot when you play this game. And if you think the best skill expression in Pokemon is to run somewhat standard teams and just build a game plan that out outsmarts your opponent's game plan, then I can see why you'd think that you'd rather have it banned. And that's because, of course, the uncertainty is extremely annoying. And But personally, I'm a fan of this kind of like. I think that's what makes Pokemon, right? Or else we would be playing something else. Like um, it's not that it's I don't know. It's not that it's epic to just run weird stuff and make it work. I mean, that's big part of the appeal for me personally. Um, However, it's just I think it's a defining characteristic of this game, and or at least maybe not of the game as a whole, because that doesn't happen in other generations as much. Like the older the generation generally, the less likely you run into this kind of stuff. Obviously, you can always play a gem without Custap Berry, for example, right? You can just play RBY and then you wouldn't have to deal with anything except pure Pokemon as a test of skill and wit. Uh, but I think if you're playing a newer generation, oh, okay, maybe Black and White does not fall into the newer category, but let's say newer, just a generation with a lot of mechanics and items and whatnot. The more the more options you have, the more wide open your team building can get, and some people like it, others not as much. There's also even newer gens that feel a bit more constricted compared to Black and White, me personally. And what we're seeing on screen, right? So imagine if this Tyranitar had a move like, say, Thunder Wave, it would have completely nullified Jiroshi. Now, it did not, so that saved Tizio Potente. But like, if you can see how it could lead to very annoying situations, like again, if it was Thunderwave, Titar, for example, does Tizio say, okay, it's okay, I'll just go Breloom and nullify the Thunderwave, or do I stay in and hope I don't get pursued? And it Custap opens up all these interactions and makes them coin flippy in a sense, because you don't know if your opponent has Custap 1, 2, you don't know their move set. And so it adds a lot of uncertainty and it makes the game overall kind of weird. Like there's no there's no optimal play when you have to take custom bear into account, because you have to do a soul read, basically like a hardcore prediction, and you're also predicating it on your opponent actually having Costa Berry and running a certain move. And so I can see the argument. I don't necessarily disagree with it as a whole, but and I can see why, if we left this unchecked and it became more popular, then it would make playing actually very annoying in a sense. So I guess my very nuanced take is, let's wait and see. Although you can also make an argument that it if it if it stays as it is right now, it's already very annoying, and then maybe it would be better to remove it now, while painless. Whereas if it becomes more entrenched, then you're like, oh, you will get a lot of people who say stuff like, oh yeah, but I like Custap Berry. I use it on a lot of teams, and I don't want it gone. And then obviously it becomes very hard to get it banned. Uh, that said, I'm on the no ban camp for now. I'm not even sure if there's a serious discussion about actually banning it. Um, I only live in my own bubble, and like people don't want to ban it necessarily, for now at least. But they do see the potential. potential for the what's it called, for the like it can just lead to a metagame that's not really fun to play because it has so much uncertainty that suddenly you're kind of just randomly guessing when you're playing against someone. And for now, we only really have Tyranitar using it, and not always, of course. But I know people who experimented with um, other potential Custap Berry users, and it's like, yeah, um, we're still figuring it out basically, so it's not the best as of now, but it could get really annoying to play against. And so, yeah, I can see the argument. Let me put on the game just so I don't have to to stare on my model. All right, so I also wonder if should we should we say the same about stuff like resist berries, for example? Like, does Yache Berry Landorus Therian, a random example that sometimes pops up in games, like, should we consider it the same way? Obviously not, right? Because um, you can generally, like, it doesn't impede your game plan, even if it's Yache Berry on Landorus, some, like, not always at least. And you can play around it and whatnot. It doesn't really change the flow of the game, whereas the possibility of your opponent running Custap Berry actually does completely change how you should approach the game. And and so and so maybe we should get rid of it, maybe not. I don't know. Am I propagandizing myself with this video? Perhaps. I don't know. I'm in the no ban camp as of now, but hey, I might change my idea eventually. I need to see it a little bit more though. For now, it's still a bit of a fringe option, and so it's like, yeah, we see it sometimes. It does flip games, and so I can see the problem with it, but also it's a bit I don't know. It just I know we should maybe not be so fiscal with everything about tiering. I myself would prefer a bit more fluidity in the policy of how we actually deal with stuff in the meta. Um, and that's why I'm even entertaining this idea and why I'm making a video about it. But do we care? Like, I'm still not convinced. And so, yeah, I'm not sure. This is game one of the Black and White Cup finals, by the way. Not even really watching it. Let's see what we have here. Dragonite GRC, Body Slam Para. Is it? Oh, it's left is denied. And Dragonite just got one hit KO'd by GRC. And it's. Oh, it moved. Very nice. So yeah, that's it about Custap Berry, really. It's an it's a nice what if. It's an interesting, let's say, exercise in theorizing both how the game would evolve if it became more popular, which it's an interesting way of looking at a metagame that's as old as Black and White, and also it is a serious um, what's it called? It's a serious matter in a sense, right? Because obviously, if if my theory is true, which is if it becomes a little bit more popular, then it completely changes how everyone should approach the game. Then we should do our best to prepare for it. And how does one do it? Well, as of now, we really don't, so I'm not sure. But if I had to consider cool stuff, well, obviously, team building doesn't really change by much, but playing wise, you will need a way different approach to the game. Uh, what other mons could run Custap Berry? I'm not sure. For now, it's mostly Tyranitar who does. And I think it's because we have been almost exclusively Chopple for so long that people kind of assume default Chopple Berry. And even then, you cannot just raw focus blast it, right? With, say, your Zam, because then you might run into Chopple and you lose your Zam, and then that's obviously not ideal. Other mounts that could run Berry, there's a couple I've seen, Latios, maybe. Stuff that this is another problem with Berry, right? It's very weird in a sense because it's not really the optimal item on anything, and sometimes you will need Endure to even guarantee it. But there's a lot of caveats, right? If your mon is weak to sun, like takes sun damage, for example, you cannot really use Endure, right? Because then you can assume that sun will be up a lot of the times, and so you can Endure and then die to sun, and that's really not it. Um, and and most other mons that are not Tyranitar doesn't don't really have a good way of abusing Custap Berry. I think so, at least. So I don't know. I don't know. Who wins this game? Uh, the rain team wins at this point. Tyranitar is low, Politoed on the field, just click Scald. And oh, wait. Chance? Do you pursue it here? I won. No, Exiline. Don't crunch. Sad. Look, if this was Custap Latios here, for example. What? Look. What's this term? If this was Custap, that would be the funniest thing ever, right? I don't think it is. It's probably just specs. Uh, is it? No, I don't think it's choice. Actually, it's too little to ferro. But see, like in every game, you can just again round two of if what if this was Gustav. Mm, Sub detail. Oh, Scarfax, right? So just Iron Head. Dragon Tail, Tita. Oh, back into X. But yeah, that's it really. That's a big that like Gustav just makes the game really flippy, and so I can see why some people would get rid of it or at least consider getting rid of it. Um, I don't agree with them as of yet, but eventually they will be they might get vindicated. That's uh, that's it. That's it really. It will be extremely controversial, obviously, and also it's it's hard to actually get anything done about it because it's not broken by any means. It just makes the game really awful to play. Um, all the time. Yeah, it's also always a disaster to try to ban an item unless it's super mega broken on everything, everywhere, all at once, right? That's the like gems, for example, got banned, right? That's the only item ban aside from Soldew, and that's okay because those items both were broken on everything that could run it. Random. Well, not maybe not everything. Obviously, Magikarp with gems is not going to do much, but um, the list of things that would have to that could run them and be broken or almost broken was very long. Custap Berry does not have the same appeal, not even close. It's not as applicable. So yeah, this would be a head scratcher for the policy people, but hey, that's not me, luckily. So yeah. Although honestly am not even sure if it's ever happening or if it's even being considered in any serious capacity. I can win if this is not Scarflando, but I think it is. Like, it will need a couple more flinches, but that's about it. Nope. And although it was probably Scarflando, so game's gone. Yeah, that's it. That's the video. So see you next time.